Clubhouse. 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 Thank you. Clubhouse. Clubhouse. Thank you. Clubhouse. 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 Clubhouse.
Thank you. Hello. How are you? I hope you're well. Today's actually a really lovely night. It is 6:19 of a Tuesday, 25th of June, and this is a podcast episode, which is basically a little bit of audio journaling, which is also just a little bit of fun, you know? I think this is fun. I really hope that you're getting some joy out of it as well. I think that's the point of this podcast, is to kind of bring a little bit of joy into people's lives in a way. Bring a little bit of joy into people's lives. Have I been doing that successfully? No, I've been failing at that horribly, but I'll make up for it. I think that's sort of the intention. Perhaps make it so my joy is infectious. Just some good vibes, some truth, some honesty about me, my mental health struggles, and just life in general. I think that that's a good thing. I looked through the photos of my Euro trip back in late January and February. That's when this whole life change happened, I think. In Europe, I had so many realizations, and I had a lot of cathartic experiences, let's say, moments of realization about my life and all the poor decisions I've made that sort of led me to where I was at, which was to be very unhappy, with myself, mentally, psychologically, physically. That's what I revealed about myself, is that the assumptions that I was making about what kind of person I should be, and assumptions about the people that I should be working with and associating with, were just wrong. And I don't want to be unfair to anyone. It's just that I wasn't happy. So I wanted to find out what was making me unhappy. And I realized it was working with my family, and that a big part of my unhappiness was the frustrations that I've experienced being a child of abuse as well as divorce. And that left an indelible mark on me. And I think what I was trying to do when I was working with my family is to resolve those issues, which were emotional and psychological, not financial. And what I realized is that my family uses finance as a cover, or in lieu of emotional support. And I think that was essentially the main issue that I was grappling with. It really isn't anything quite profound, but for me it felt so strong, because I thought my father was a good businessman and an honest person, and he's a poor businessman and he's dishonest, and that really affected me. He has the worst instincts for business in the Lebanese Maronite community in the world. And what I mean by that is the instinct to covet your money, to abuse the people below you. My father is the embodiment of the statement, you are nothing without me. You know, he said that to me just a few days ago. How disgusting and appalling do you think it is for me to hear from my father after all that has gone through this podcast, the mental health breakdown on Facebook, all that stuff, for him to say that I am nothing without him? I just, lordy loo. It's frustrating, it's hurtful, but also it's delusional. But I can't force my father to do anything. He was trying to force me to do things that he wanted me to do because he is an abusive individual. I'm not. I don't abuse. I just don't. I get angry, I get honest, I get malicious, but I don't abuse in that way. What I found out about my entire family is that they're all abusers. No, that's unfair. Yeah, I really shouldn't make any general statements like that. My father Majid's an abuser. My uncle Maroon is an abuser. My uncle Charlie is an abuser. My first cousin Majid is an abuser. Right? That's just what they've learned. When I was in Europe, that's when I made all these realizations that really there's nothing much to it. You know, I've just been incorrect about the assumptions that I've made about my aunties and uncles. And one of the big realizations that I had was that I was the moving force in the family, and they never appreciated that. So I was the one that made it so they got money. You know, I put my uncle in that sort of position, and my father desperately, with all his being, tried to make sure it is understood. No, it is not my son who is doing all the good things. It is me, Majid, an insecure victim of neglect by his father, Saeed. And that's all it really is. It's just evidence of generational trauma. My father's inability to work with me, to treat me like a son and an equal, is appalling and just eye-opening. It's good for me to see the kind of person that my father is, because it doesn't scare me, it doesn't concern me that he's stubborn, because that's all it is. He tried so hard to financially abuse me. He prevented me from getting Centrelink, workers' compensation, payment from the builders. That's all he is. He's a crook and a thug. That's all. Sorry. That's the realization that I had in Europe on God. So if you have an issue with that statement, and if you want to refer back to me forgiving my father, number one, forgiving him. He's still a bad person. He still deserves bad things. Not deserves bad things. How do you say? Rather, this is justified criticism, not hate. Does that make sense? Right, so let's just say I get smacked in the face by my father. Me saying, ow, that hurt, Dad, that was mean, is not to say that I don't forgive my father. It's just someone that's looking at the situation and is a little bit confused. I keep hearing forgive, forgive, forgive. Forgive what? My father is in Qatar, and he refuses to acknowledge what he did, and he refuses to have a mediation. It's not forgiveness. It's understanding the issues that my father has mentally and psychologically, and me doing something about it. This podcast is a miracle. This is going to convince my father of something that would have been impossible to do face to face, because he's afraid of a face to face conversation. The only conversation that I can have with my father is me against him and the entire family. And even then, it's not a fair fight. I'll still come on top verbally. 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 I don't want to hurt my father. But a mediation is something that I felt was essential, but my father refuses to come to the table and see me as an equal. For him, it's essential, it's fundamental to maintain the false hierarchy. What false hierarchy? All hierarchies are false. To maintain a hierarchy. Nope. I do not come to the table for my son. My son comes to the table for me. Kind of stupid attitude, which makes sense if he's a father. But he's not really acting like a father. And that's my point. He's not acting like a father. So I'm not treating him like a father. Fathers do not run away to Qatar when stuff gets real with their son. Sorry, I do not respect men that do that. My father, Majid Said Taouk, is an individual that engages in activity that are unbecoming of someone worth respect. Give me something to respect. You gave me $150,000. That's buried in all the bad deals with Happy Lion. Put me back as director. Put me director as Happy Lion, and I'll fix all the problems, Dad. Of course he won't, because to him it's this silly, disgusting power play. And that's what I realized in Europe. That's all it ever was with my dad. Just this nasty power play. He doesn't really care about being a good father or a good person. He just wants to be on top, like my Uncle Charlie, just like abusers in general. It's not about forgiveness. It's about doing the right thing. I hope that's clear. And I don't mean to denigrate my father as such. I don't think that being honest about him is a denigration. I think it's poor that he's in Qatar, and it's poor that he is so comfortable with stonewalling, and it's poor that he would lie to other good men about what he did in a desperate attempt to make himself seem innocent, because that's all that my father cares about, and that is appalling. That's idolatry, by the way. You know, a love of a son, that's almost like a sacrament, right? For you to cast that off, a love of your son, for your ego, that's a sin. I hope that's understood, right? Me making a podcast, trying to be as honest and forthright as possible about my father, I don't know why people still have an issue with it, and why they are happier with the silence in the suffering, right? So that's the problem. Silence is fine if everything is fine. But what I notice working with my family is that everyone in the family is suffering. And I know that a huge part of that is due to their financial burdens that were put on them in a lot of ways by their family. That's all. Yeah, it's my opinion. It's my feeling. I'm just having feelings on a podcast. That's all. You know, don't feel confronted by it. And by the way, feelings is the thing that got me, Majid, and Francis in trouble in Europe. That's all it was. You know, Rome was devastating for me and Majid, because I gave Majid a time for him to meet me at Rome, and at that time, because I was going through a lot of emotions, it was so critical for him just to be on time, you know? And I waited in the Vatican Square for about half an hour for him. And and then I just left, and I decided after that point I'm not gonna keep playing this game with them, because I had emotions to process, and me being around my sister and Majid were preventing me from processing my emotions. I felt that their attitude was really, really sort of insensitive, let's just say. Um, so, from my perspective, me waiting for Rome was me waiting in um, Vatican Square for Majid for half an hour. Was at the time, because I just felt like I was under so much pressure. It's just no. Like, if I have to wait a minute, like, that's it. I'm going, because I've done so much for this kid, and like, he's been such a jerk the whole trip, and I'm fucking over his attitude, right? And what I found out from my sister recently is that he was desperate to make that deadline, and apparently he was frantic getting dressed and trying to make it there on time, and yeah, he didn't, and I just left, right? Um, if it was me in this state today, past all that emotional kind of turbulence, of course I would have waited for him. I would have, yeah, it would have been fine, no issue. But I knew that he came to Europe with a lot of baggage, let's just say, and I came to Europe with a fudge load of baggage to relieve myself. And he was just preventing me from relieving it. And it's like, dude, I just want to go to Vatican City to go to church and have a cathartic experience with my first cousin, right? I told him to be in Rome like a day before I gave him the time, right? And what the issue that I was having with Majid in Sydney was his poor organizational skills, right? That's why he was failing on the concreting contract. And I'm like, okay, I've given you a task, right? Be here at this time on holiday. It's not complicated. And he couldn't do that. I'm just like, you know what? I'm fucking sick of being reminded that my cousin has no desire to treat me with respect, to come to terms with the issues that have been plaguing him, to understand that he is a huge burden to me emotionally. A huge burden. Like, dude, I knew that you were in a bad mood. Like, do you know how traumatizing it was that I was dying and you just, oh my God, you were so petty. You were so petty. Oh Lord. Yeah. And anyway, it just evolved, and it turned into him stealing money from me, which is great. But all it was emotional misunderstanding. Um, I really, really wanted Europe to be a beautiful cathartic experience for me and Majid, but it just was never going to be that. And I think that that's okay, right? Because it was an important lesson for both him and I to learn, right? I learned who he is, and he learned who I am, right? And my sister did as well. And, that's a good thing. I don't think he was at a point where he could have joined me anyway. I think that, it was just on God that it had to kind of be that, And I know that Majid will go back to Europe again to make up for that poor trip, because he would have got a taste of it, right? And once the trauma of what happened with me passes, he'll remember that, hey, I was in the Vatican City. I went to Northern Italy on my own. I hope that once all the bad stuff sort of dissipates, you're just left with the good stuff. And the good stuff is that, business class trip, Europe. And now Majid can say, regardless of the feeling, let's just not be bitter about it. Let's consider the good. You went to Finland, to Italy, to Holland, to France, right? These are great, great things that Majid did, But at the time, he couldn't see that. He was just bitter and upset and didn't know how to relieve himself of all that stress. I could have shown him. after Vatican City, I went to southern Germany, where I had the most profound spiritual and cathartic experience of my life. And all it took was just a good deed, I suppose. Nice steak, lovely apple juice. Uh, I was the happiest that I've felt in years, just doing something so simple, cutting a branch, having a barbecue, cutting a branch using timber from that tree to make a fire, um, cooking it, cooking a steak in that fire, and having the most beautiful fresh apple juice from freshly picked apples from this amazing mountainous region in Germany. Right, so you can only get this apple juice in this specific region, and it's always fresh. It's even got sediment at the bottom of it. I got a bottle from my Uncle Maroon for him to try, but then when what happened, I just drank it and realized that it had gone pretty like sour. What I realized, and in southern Germany, was really the most important, profound, beautiful things in life are, if not free, super cheap. And that was one of those profound realizations, and a message that I really wanted to send to my friends and family when I came back to Australia, to let them know that going to Europe really isn't that hard, and it's not that expensive, and we should begin normalizing trips like that, you know. The simple act of driving across Europe, which is one of the cheapest ways to travel, especially if you have an electric car, is so profoundly eye-opening and cathartic. So when I say catharsis, I mean sort of an emotional release. Like, whoa, this is so beautiful, this is so cool, this is so great. And just let it yourself kind of have that experience, and I say that because people waste so much money having a catharsis through cocaine and alcohol. I think of how much half an ounce of cocaine costs. Was it like three to 5,000? I don't know. Anyway, I have no idea. But basically, a ticket to Europe is the price of a bender. And if you're in Eastern Europe, it's about as cheap as Thailand, for God's sakes. You can get a car for as little as $50 a day. And you can just have just the time of your life driving. I don't know what it is, but I think that's the message. Let's just say that road trips across Europe are really beneficial mentally if you're dealing with stress and burnout from work. So if you're that type of person that has to go back to work less than a week after your brother passed away, you definitely need a break. And we as a community need to come together and figure out how we can design that break, how we can make it work financially for you. Because it's not that hard to carve out 2 weeks and, let's say, $5,000. Yeah, it could be as little as 3,000, just to be far away from your problems and to be able to switch off and to be somewhere where you can reset. Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. Somewhere far away, alien but beautiful, where you can reset. If you're feeling stressed, if you're saying, I don't believe in God anymore, because my life is so bad, that's a cry for help. I understand these sort of, thoughts and habits. And if you get to a particular point where you're thinking particular things or you're saying particular things that are a little bit dark, then, perhaps it's time for you to consider having a break, taking a pause, you know. And I really do say that for men, especially men with children. I think um, mothers have that beautiful catharsis, raising the kids and having that lovely, loving experience, right? But for men with work, the feedback loop is just toxic because it's just about getting money and being around, blokes that perpetuate the same negativity, you know. By negativity, I just mean stress and complaints, you know. Um, Tradies not coming to work on time, clients not paying on time, defects, delays, stuff like that, you know. It's good to just have a pause from that. And I think, yeah, I'm going to see if I can um, get that message across to Mansour and Halim as well, because I think Mansour needs to try to find a way to get Halim to have a pause, 2 weeks somewhere. And I genuinely think Halim's scared to go traveling. I think it's this odd kind of pathology that's telling, because Mansour's got this thing about feet, right? And that's obviously it's a reflection of his own sort of insecurity and self-esteem. And it's not a bad thing, by the way. It's just, a quirk that people have. His hatred of feet and women barefoot isn't really sort of like this proclamation that I'm cool because I'm noticing some, people doing something gross. It's sort of like the fact that you're so obsessed about it reveals something more about you. Yeah, that's a little fun digression, Mansour. Ugh, yeah. It's called armchair psychology. That's what I'm doing. I'm pretending that I know you, right, from the safety of my room and my microphone. It's not true. It's just a feeling. You know what I mean? But yeah, he needs to make it so he can manage, and Halim needs a break. And by the way, I offer my services free of charge as an act of contrition, right? Dude, I am so sorry for the hell that, I was trying to put Halim through and all the disgusting stuff that I put his family through. And I got to make up for it because, yeah, it's not really about commitments that I make to people, because I realized that I can't really trust people like my father and Majid and my uncle and Charlie and my God, so many people. But, I could trust me in the, little secret sort of deals that I have with people. And, yeah, I made a commitment. So I got to help Mansour out, managing his company. Oh, God. Look at me. What the hell? I mean, talk about delusional, right? But what do you want from me? It is what it is. I knew that I'd have to make up for all that crap that I was saying. I knew that I'd eventually have to do an apology tour. So Tony's passed away and Halim's still working. So that seems like a good start. I wonder how hard it would be to get Halim in a car. Halim and Youssef road trip Europe. Brotherly love. Talk about catharsis. Whee! Eliciting an emotional response. Wow. Yeah, man. And by the way, we got 3 months of good weather in Europe. So we got time. So relax. Don't stress and be like, oh crap, Andrew's going to start media dumping and going manic about Europe now. I'm not. Don't worry. It's just a feeling. It's just a podcast. It's just words. That's all. All right? Love you. Bye.